It's a pinned comment, and you'll also see the URL for them as we move forward in the bottom here. So I am going to try and multitask a lot and pay attention to the chat while I'm paying attention to my presentation. It might get a little, you might have to wait a little bit as I shift my brain back and forth. This is my first time teaching since summer school, so I might be a little all over the place. All right, so today's presentation is spreadsheets don't have to be scary. Something that I believe in full. My name is Stephen Elliott. If you haven't seen my name on all of these different links enough yet, I am the ed tech at La Paz Middle School. I teach a course called Applied Technology or Career Technology, depending on which middle school site you're at. I love data and I love cats. I've got a cat at home and other things, but those are the big things. So what is the purpose of today's presentation? We're going to be talking about Google Sheets for the very novice beginner level of Google Sheets users. Let's say that spreadsheets are a part of your life as a teacher. They're not going away. And this is how you survive and get information out of a spreadsheet without being overloaded by a bunch of data. This is meant to be the very basic level. So please do stop me, ask me to repeat myself, to demonstrate something again. I will gladly do that. And if you feel like this is probably too basic for you, if you're looking at my slides and you know how to do all this stuff, I will not be insulted. If you feel like you want to go jump in on another training, I would say do it quick so that you can get all that's good in that. There's a lot of great sessions going on. But yeah, this is the very basic level. And for those of you who are interested in more advanced application of spreadsheets, how it ties into pedagogy, and even a little more about spreadsheet functions, which we'll talk about a little bit in this session, I'm teaching 2 more spreadsheet classes, one on Thursday in the afternoon and one on Friday in the morning. Thursday talking about how you can collect data and how you can make it relevant to your teaching practice using spreadsheets. And the third, on Friday, we'll be talking about spreadsheet functions specifically, and we'll get into the weeds with that. So just so you're aware, there's some other options available if you're at a different level. Follow along with me as well. At various points in this presentation, you're going to see templates that you can click on, create a copy for yourself, and practice what I'm going to do. And if you practice, you'll get better faster. So I'm not going to be checking on you. This is not homework to turn in, but I highly recommend that you follow along with me. Okay, and that is one of the other reasons why I really would like you to get the slides, which are at the top of my chat. And also you can see in the corner of my screen, you can see the URL for the slides. It'll be there whenever it's possible. Okay, so you can put a table for data in a Google Doc or a Google slide. I'm sure you're familiar with that process. So what makes a spreadsheet better than that? Well, as of this current date, who knows what updates may come in the future. What a table in Google Docs and Google Slides can't do is it can't alphabetically sort your data. It can't filter out data that you don't want temporarily and then put it back in when you want it back. And it can't do functions or perform calculations to crunch your numbers for you. And those are some things we're going to talk about today. All right. And I know you may be thinking they're so ugly and they're so gross. Why would I want to put more spreadsheets in my life? I'm here to tell you it gets better. Most people, and this includes me, do not enjoy looking at raw data. If you've ever had your students fill out a Google form and then you got 150, 175 responses that you had to sift through, you're looking at raw data, unprocessed data. And I don't enjoy that any more than anyone else, even though I do love spreadsheets. So my recommendation, when you get some of that raw, or sometimes I even call it ugly data, when you get some of that raw, ugly data from either whatever app you're pulling reports from or Google Forms, for example, I recommend 3 steps that we're going to go over today. First, format it. Second, filter it. And third, as is appropriate, give it some functions. All right, so we're going to do that today. Here's a template. You click this link, and it is a forced copy. So you will make your version of this spreadsheet. And this is a fake quiz that has questions from a Science 7 background, which is what I taught before I had my CTE course. And this is exactly how it would appear in a Google form. And you can already kind of see this looks probably pretty familiar, except for the fact that it's 11 or 12 responses instead of 150. But this applies what we're going to do to everything. Over the next, I want to say, let me just check my table of contents. All the way to slide 16, we're going to see slides that have screenshots of everything and how to do it. I'm not going to go over these slides because they're there for your reference later, because we're going to do this live. If there's any problems with accessing this spreadsheet, please let me know so we can figure it out. But I'm hoping that many of you have this in front of you and you're willing to get started with me. So what we're going to start with is we're going to change this font because I'm getting old and I cannot look at little tiny font like this. This is size 10 font, which is too small for me. I think it should be size 14 at least. So I'm going to click my favorite button in every spreadsheet, which is in the top corner. It's to the left of the A and above the number 1. And when I click it, everything turns blue. What I've done is I've selected the entire spreadsheet. So once again, I'm just going to click off to the side so you can see this. I'm going to click that button. It's right here. Everything turns blue. Now, whatever changes I make to the text, and here's the regular menu. If you use Google Docs, Google Slides, most of this should be familiar. There's a couple other things we'll go over specifics about. That's a global change, meaning it changes the entire document. So now we're at size 14 font. Now I'm operating in a very small window because I have 2 windows open to monitor my chat. But if you've got it at home large, you're going to see this is going to be, and you can just keep going until it's big enough for you, right? So for me, size 14 seems pretty good. I actually think that I want my first, my headings right here, which are the titles of what each category is, right? This is default from Google Forms. I'd like those to be even stand out even more. So I'm going to select the number 1. That just is everything in that row. All right. So if I select the number 1, you can see as I scroll to the side, even, well, there's not anything. Oh, there's a bunch of blank fields right here, but everything in number 1 is selected. So what I'm going to do from there is bold the text. I like that. Maybe I'll even make it center justified. So I'll center it so I can see it all like that. I appreciate that. I may do some resizings of my columns. So if I put my mouse right in between 2 columns, I can make them smaller or bigger, depending on how big I need to be them to be. And I can also do something to make sure that when I sort my data, this row that's highlighted right here, row number 1, doesn't show up. So if I'm going to sort my data alphabetically, I don't want timestamp, score, first name, last name to get mixed up in all of that. So here's what I'm going to do next. I am going to go into the View menu. And if you get lost, please let me know. But also, please check out the screenshots that show all of these different steps on the slideshow if you're looking at this after the fact. Or email me. I'll gladly help you. So if I go into View and Freeze, I'm going to go to Row. All right. So Yvonne, the slideshow that I have, it's going to be on slide number 10, and it's linked right here where it says where this template. All right, let me go back to that. I've got this selected, freeze, and I'm going to do 1 row. You'll notice I can also freeze a column if I want, but let's just see what happens when I freeze the row. Okay, I get this little dark line right here. And when I scroll up and down, this is kind of cool. The title stays with it. But if I were to sort all of the names alphabetically, for example, in column D, which is something we're going to do in a second, these would stay at the top. They would always be anchored at the top. That way, all of your titles don't get mixed up in your data and you always know what you're looking at. So that's very useful right there. Let's do that alphabetical sorting now. Are we doing okay? Give me a thumbs up in the emoticons, or a comment if we're following along okay. Questions as well. Thank you. Oh, thanks for all those thumbs up. It's really great. I want this to be set up how it will look. I'm gonna actually zoom out a little bit, but you can see what the actual data says. We'll zoom in later if we need to. I want period number to be 1, 2, 3, and I want last name by period number, because that's how it gets entered in the grade book. So if I want to enter grades quickly, and I've got automatically calculated grades over here, later in the sandbox session, if you don't know how to add grades to a Google form, let me know. I'll definitely demonstrate that for you so that I can just type my numbers in. All right. Let me demonstrate freezing real quick. I see, is Noemi in the chat? You're asking about that. We're going to go and select the number 1. And I'm going into the view for the spreadsheet. I'm going to press freeze, and I'm going 1 row. I can also go 2 rows if I want. I can also select all the rows I want to freeze, and this menu will come automatically up and change it. But for most Google Forms, most Google Form responses, you're gonna want to just freeze the top row, because that's the only one that you don't want to move. All right. So what you're gonna see, I'm gonna punch in a little bit. What you're gonna see when you go to the columns here, and let's start with the period, which is, you can see the students have periods 1, 2, and 3. Get this triangle and open it up. There's going to be a menu here. And one of the options is sort sheet A through Z. Even though it's numbers, it's going to be, for example, the equivalent of A is number 1. The equivalent of B is number 2. So A through Z just means from the smallest value to the largest value. And Caitlin, I notice you're asking about what freezing does. Well, let's notice one thing. If I have this right here, I'm just going to really quickly unfreeze. So I put no rows. Now watch what happens when I scroll up. The data is here and the title goes away. But if I freeze it, now when I scroll up and down, the titles stay with it. So I always know what I'm looking at. The added bonus is if I sort, which I'm about to do, you'll notice that this doesn't change with me. If I was going alphabetically, it would move to different parts of the spreadsheet. And if you have a spreadsheet that's like 200 entries or something, you're not going to even know where your data went, and you have to go and get it again. And you have to do that every time you sort the data. But if you freeze the row, it stays locked to the top. And you can, like I said, you can freeze columns too. So if you wanted to freeze the student name, then you could scroll left to right through their responses, and you could always know which student's name you're looking at. So that's another way that you could use this. So once again, I'm going into this menu here. I've got column E, the period. Follow along with me and sort sheet A through Z. Sort sheet, sort sheet. That's a good vocal warm up. When I click on it, you'll notice I get 1, 2, 3 from top to bottom. Deborah, yes, you can freeze multiple rows or columns at once. What you would do is, let me just show you. If you shift click, I've got 3 rows right here. And this wasn't an option before I selected that. But look, now it says up to row 3. And if I wanted instead to freeze 5 rows, I could shift click number 5, go into the view menu. Whoops, view menu, excuse me. And now it says up to row 5. The reason that it changed is because that's how many rows I have highlighted. So it's kind of trying to guess what it is that I want to do. I'm going to leave it at 1. All right. So I've got 1 through 3, but if I look at these last names, these are not alphabetized. They're just according to period. So I'm going to go into this menu here. This is column D, and I'm sorting sheet A through Z again. But since I already sorted them by period, and you have to do it period first and last name next, otherwise this won't work. Whoops, you know what? I think it's the other way around. I'm so sorry. It's been a while since I've done this. I'm going to sort sheet A through Z by last name first. So now here, but the periods are all over. Yeah, it goes left to right. When I do the same thing twice, there we go. Now we are alphabetical by period. And I'm going to zoom out so you can see. If I'm looking at this spreadsheet and I want to be able to enter scores quickly, I can start at period 1. And this should be the very first person if I'm sorted by last name. Of course, I could sort by first name too if that's how it's set up in your Synergy. And then I can just look at it on one side of the screen and enter it on the other side. So you can enter grades really quickly now if you're getting something from a Google form. All right. So with that out of the way, let me just go back to my table of contents here. Oh, we're going to do a couple of other things to make this more readable. This first one is going to involve my favorite button, which is above the number 1. And to the left of the number A is right here. Everything's selected. From there, go into Format. And once again, there's screenshots of this on the slideshow that I share with you. If you get stuck and you're looking for where is that menu, or ask me again in the chat. And I'm going to go to alternating colors. So once again, with everything selected, that box in the top left corner, click alternating colors. And I'm going to get this menu. It's defaulted to this gray color. I don't like that gray color, so I'm going to do this blue color. When I click it, I get a blue title, and then all the rows underneath that main blue title are going to be white and blue, white and blue, white and blue. This means I can track visually across the lines and I don't end up bouncing up or down accidentally and reading the wrong score. I can also change a custom style if I decide, well, actually, I want it to be blue and yellow for some reason. Or I think this is too dark. Let me bring it to a lighter blue color. Okay. And then that's done. I can also remove that down here by going into this menu again. But let's look, if I unselect it, now I have a visual picture of how my data lines up. To me, this is a lot easier to look at and read. Maybe for you as well, hopefully. And the fact that you can customize the colors makes it a lot easier to just be able to figure out what we're looking at here. So with that all done, what we have now is all of our data. We can scroll up and down and see what they're doing. I do have one more problem I want to address, and that is students wrote a paragraph in column J, and it's big. And if you scroll to the right, I'm not going to want to read like this. I do not want to scroll back and forth and do this and make myself dizzy towards times 150, 200 students, right? I want my paragraphs to be readable right then and there so I can just see how it looks. So what I'm going to do is, first I want to make this column wider. I'm just going to put my mouse between the J and K columns, click on it, drag it out. I want to say maybe this far, okay? And with the alphabet letter J selected, notice when I select the column by the alphabet, it selects everything. So all the way down, even these blank ones that don't have anything in them. So I'm going to select J. All right, and now I'm going into these tools, and you're going to notice right before where it says text rotation and after where it says vertical align, there's a little symbol. And I'm going to go back to my slides, even though I said I wasn't going to, just to give you a picture of what we're looking at, because it's kind of hard to see. But on slide 15, you can see what the menu looks like. It's a little arrow that curves and points down. That's called text wrapping. It's going to stop at this line and insert the rest of the text below. Let's click it and see what happens. Okay, now I have my paragraphs and I can read them. It did make my top menu a little bit thick, which means that now all of these top menus are super thick and they don't need to be. However, I can fix that. Let me go out of the selection. So I deselected everything. I'm going to select just the top menu, and I'm going to give it a different text wrap style. I'm going to do, since I remember my prompt, I wrote this quiz, right? I'm just going to do a clip style and watch what happens when I do that. Okay. I can still see what I wrote because if you'll notice above, all the text that's in the box is happening up here in where you see this FX box. So I can recheck what I wrote if I need to. I can also leave that up there while I scroll down and look at the responses and say, are these responses correct? Which of these things will be getting a good grade and which not so good of a grade? I can review the student's writing from the spreadsheet directly. And I can increase or decrease the size of the column. by using the double arrow tool that I get when I go between two columns. And that gives me whatever I feel comfortable with scrolling back and forth. Right. So that is what I would do just for formatting. And I tend to format most of my spreadsheets this way, so they're easy to read. If I'm sharing with a bunch of people who might not be familiar with my work and what I'm talking about, then I would take this top column right here and I would just put on the text wrapping, even though that would make a very large top heading, because then everyone can see what it is that I wrote in that spot. And I might even go into alignment and make it center aligned so that it's center aligned here and here. That's something that you would see in the formatting of like a Google Doc or a Google slide as well, anything with text in it. But let's put it back in clip mode. All right, cool. So that's the formatting. And like I said, here we've got screenshots of everything that shows you how to do all the stuff that I did. Oh, there's another thing that you may like. A lot of the reasons I think that some people really don't like spreadsheets is because of this over here. These columns, and especially these rows, they go on and on for infinity, and sometimes it's a bit overwhelming. So can I get rid of them? Well, I could delete them, but what if I need them later, right? So I'm going to do something else. I've selected column K, and you can press Control, Shift, and then press the rightward button, the one that goes from K all the way down. And you've selected every column that's available on this screen. If I take my two fingers and on a trackpad, I'm going to do a two-finger tap. If you have a mouse, you could do a right click and you get this menu. And note it says hide columns K through P. I'm going to do that right now. Okay. And now my spreadsheet only goes from A to J. However, if I want those pieces back, now this one I am going to zoom in quite a bit to see if I can show you what this looks like. Right where I hid those columns, it's a little bit hard to see. There's a little black arrow pointing towards column A from column J. And if I click on that, take me a second to get it. If I click on that, it's going to give me my columns back. And I'm going to do it with the rows so you can see it a little bit more easily. So check this out. Once again, I'm going to start at number 14 because I don't have anything after number 14. It might be more for your spreadsheets that you're using. Control, Shift, and the down button. Note it went all the way down to row 113, but you might have 900 rows on a spreadsheet. It'll select all of them. Control, Shift, and then the direction that you want the selection to go. And same thing, I'm going to go in between and press hide rows 14 through 113. Now, the only thing that shows up on the spreadsheet is the stuff that has data, which is the stuff that I'm going to analyze. And once again, there's a little tiny triangle, which I'm going to need to zoom in a little bit. I'm working very small because of just trying to monitor my chat. I'm at 33%. My goodness. See if I can get a little bit taller. So if I want my stuff back, I can go to this triangle. Did I get it? Nope. Well, I can also two-finger tap. And if you see in the corner here, it says unhide rows. I do that and they're back. All right. So I can always get them back, which is different from deleting them. That's an option here. But I like to hide them because you never know when you need to add more. And in today's presentation, we actually will be adding something to the bottom. So I'm going to leave it like that so that you guys can see how do I add that later. All right. So we're going to talk about filtering and how to add filters to a spreadsheet and how we would do that. If you've been following along with me and you've filtered or you've formatted your spreadsheet in a way that you like, you can continue without grabbing the template. However, if you got messed up along the way and you want to start from a formatted spreadsheet, you can click the link that's here on slide number 17. But again, you don't have to do that if you've already been formatting with me. So once again, that's slide 17. And I'm going to add a data filter. What's my favorite button? To the left of the A, above the number 1. Select all. All right. And then we're going to go into data. The menu is data, and we're going to go to create a filter. When I click on this, data, create a filter, notice what happens. I get these little triangles to the side of every one of my columns, and they're on every one of my columns because I selected all the columns. That's going to be useful to me. If you wanted to put a filter on just one column, you would select that column and do the same thing. Go to data and then click create a filter, and it would do it for just the one. I find it's most useful to just do a filter for all of them because you never know which thing in your spreadsheet you're going to want to filter by, right? So let's say I only want to look at responses from my period 1. I'm going to click this triangle. And what you'll notice, I'm going to punch in again. What you'll notice is underneath at the bottom here, there's a bunch of other things you can do, which is nice, but I'm going to just focus on the bottom here. I see check marks and I see blank, 1, 2, and 3. That represents all of the responses that I get. If I do it over here on column F, I see blank, a chemical reaction, and nothing. Those are the responses that are possible or that are represented on column F. So let's just look at this over here. I just want period 1. Let me clear. I'm going to click right here. It says clear and check only period 1. Let's look. All right. There's only 4 responses for period 1. Obviously, it'd be like 27 to 30, depending on what kind of class you teach. But they're only period 1 here. So I can look at all of the responses for period 1 only. Let's say I want them back. Note that the icon changed a little bit. It looks like a funnel. So that's the filter symbol. If I select all, I now have 1, 2, and 3 and blanks selected. All right. And I got my periods 1, 2, and 3 back. Now you don't see the blanks because I've hidden those. They're down here. I can unhide them if I want to. Let's see. Another thing I could do, like you could also utilize it for this question, the correct answer is an earthquake. So I don't care about analyzing the responses that were correct. Those students learned what they need to learn. Great. What's the most common incorrect answer? So I'm going to get rid of blanks and I'm going to have a volcano and an avalanche. I'm just going to look at it. Okay. It looks like most of my students, more of my students than say avalanche are saying that it's a volcano. So I may need to talk a little bit more about volcanoes tomorrow. You see how doing something like this, and obviously you can go faster than how I'm going. You could spend 10 minutes formatting a quiz response, and then you can already know what you need to talk about the next day. I'm just going to go, if I press select all, I can get all of my checks back. If I press clear, I can remove them and focus on one answer at a time. And I just press OK. And now I've got my correct answers back as well. All right. So let's review. What have we done so far? We formatted this spreadsheet so that it looked very easy to read compared to what we had before. And there's obviously a lot of special things you can do beyond what I did this time, like bolding and italicizing text, freezing columns, as well as rows. So there's a lot of customization you can do to make something that looks good for you. But why would we do this? Well, like I was saying, that can help you get to what am I going to teach tomorrow a little bit faster. It can also you can analyze multiple things at a time. I could apply 2 filters if I wanted to know, for example, there's a question about the products of photosynthesis, and there's a question about chemical reactions. What if the students who got wrong the question about chemical reactions also got wrong the questions about the products of photosynthesis? Science jargon, photosynthesis is a chemical reaction, so those 2 things are connected. So I can remove the correct answers for this question and remove the correct answers for photosynthesis, for the chemical reaction question. And then I can analyze the students who got both wrong. How many students are getting both wrong? Do I need to go back and talk about chemical reactions in general? Or do I need to hit photosynthesis again because that's the one that they're missing? So filters are very useful for that purpose, especially in your classrooms. If you're an admin or someone who does office work, you may be analyzing things like behaviors or number of frequencies a student comes to the office. You can also filter for that as well. So then this is a way that it can help you analyze large chunks of data and remove what you're not ready to look at right now. And you can also put it right back just in case you want to come back to that other data that you filtered out before. Okay, now we're getting close. We are going to take a break in a little bit and come back for a sandbox time where you can practice what you're doing. You can build a spreadsheet that you're looking for to have available to you in your classrooms. I can also guide you through the process of creating some more things. After this next step, we're going to be close to that time, but I want to talk about functions. And what's a function? It's a calculation that you can get a spreadsheet to do for you automatically. This gets a little mathy. So if you're a math person, this will probably be a little more natural to you. Or if you're someone who knows anything about programming, this will probably be quite easy. I'm not a math person and I was able to figure this out. So we're going to go very simple. And if you get bit by the function bug and you want to learn more about different functions, you should definitely consider coming to my session on Friday that is all about spreadsheet functions. And you'll need to know the information that we learned today in order to get that done. So let's go to the original spreadsheet that we've been working on. And again, if you didn't manage to figure out the filter thing or one of the steps you missed, you'll notice slightly different formatting because this is an older one that I set up already for you guys. But you can click the link on slide number 21 to get something with all those previous steps completed. However, if you've been following along with me, you do not need to click this. All right. There are 3 functions I want to talk about. We're going to add a count function. Actually, it's a count if function. So I'll explain what that means in a little bit. And an average function so that we can figure out the information that we need to know automatically. And then we're going to talk about sum functions and how I would use a sum function. I have an example that you can look at and I'll gladly share it with you, but I don't think sum functions really make sense in the context of this quiz that we're looking at. So we're not going to actually put a sum function into this particular spreadsheet. So, all right, we need to get our rows back because I'm going to use the bottom row to put my function in. So just a reminder that we hid these rows, but we can get them back because we didn't delete them. Now, if I click, I'm gonna punch in a little bit. If I click the tiny triangle in the corner of the screen right here, I can click it and I'll get my rows back. And if I can't click that triangle because it's quite small, I can also just click unhide rows. But since I already showed you that, I'm going to click the triangle so you can see how that looks. Here we go. All right. And if you look down here, these are all the rows that I hid. They are back. Okay. I'm ready to talk about functions. Are you ready with me? I'm going to ask for that thumbs up in the chat or crying emoji if that's where you're at right now. You following along with me okay? Confused a little bit? Leading up to where we're at once again, if you are stuck on something, you can go back to slide 21 and you get the template. The only thing I've done so far is unhide those rows. And there's 2 ways to do that. Okay. Now we're looking at, these are the scores. The scores are automatically calculated out of 15 points. And I want the average. Here's what it looks like. And you can copy paste this from the slides if you want to, but I recommend you try the format out. Basically, I need an equal sign. And then I'm going to use, we're going to do the countif function first. Let's do that one first. I'm going to use the title and then everything I need needs to be in parentheses. So countif or equals countif and then the stuff in parentheses. The first part, the part that's in yellow is H2 colon H13. That's called my range. That's the number of cells that I want. As you see, we've got this grid set up that I want to calculate. I only am going to go down to H13 because that's where my last entry is. And I'm not going to include H1 because that's where it says the number score. So there's no reason for me to do that. So it's H2 colon. Oh, I'm sorry. I should be on column H. I apologize. But same thing that I said, it still applies. H1, we do not need to include because that's the title of the column. H2, we start from, and we go all the way down to H13. And if I select that, I'm going to shift and click. Whoops, I did that wrong. There we go. Notice in the top right-hand corner, it tells you what the range is that I've selected. I selected from H2 to H13, all right? But I can still just type that. So I'm going to do that here. And what we're doing is a COUNTIF function. COUNTIF means count the number of responses if they match what I want to know. So once again, I'm typing it equals COUNTIF and then parentheses. And we're going to do H2 colon H13. Notice that it gets highlighted and we can actually see if we scroll up that orange box. It covers everything from H2 to H13. So I know that I'm doing the right thing now. Press a comma, and now I need my expectation. So I want to know how many students responded with an earthquake. I need quotation marks, and I need it needs to be, it's case sensitive. Oops. And it's also spelling sensitive. I apologize. Earthquake. Oh my goodness. I'm teaching classes next week or in 2 weeks. So now it's already telling me a prediction of what that number is going to be. But to complete this function, I have to close the parentheses. So it's very math adjacent if you like I was saying before. But when I press enter, I get the number 5. And when I click the box, it doesn't say the number 5 above. It says the formula that I put there. If I want to remind myself, I can put the title here on the side. What if I want to know who said an avalanche? Well, I can actually copy this formula and I can paste it. But notice it's going to change some of my numbers. Now, there's a specific reason for this, but all I need to do is just change those numbers back. So it was H2 to H13. On Friday, I may be going over how you can make sure that that doesn't change. And I'm going to change this from unearthquake to an avalanche. Oops, I wrote an avalanche, which is I'm getting a 0 because that's not something that anyone wrote. But when I correctly type what the response is, I get the number 3. And there we go. I've done that. So this is a way that you can tally what responses were made. Let's see. So Caitlin's asking, how do I keep the column highlighted and type COUNTIF? Well, you don't need to highlight the column. The column will be highlighted for you automatically when you enter the range. So if I wrote H2 to H13, it will give me that highlighted box. As a matter of fact, I can show you if I change this from H2 to I13, notice that now, oops, let me do that again. Notice that now it's actually highlighting 2 columns. If I did it from HI to J13, now it's highlighting 3 columns. So as long as you're entering the correct range, it's going to highlight the columns that you want. That's just kind of like a safeguard for you so that you know that you're selecting the correct area. Okay. And so I have those 2 COUNTIF functions there. Any questions? Are we good? All right. I could also, this is another way that I could look at subgroups. If I have a spreadsheet that has the student subgroup, like they're an EL, an EO, they're an SWD, or they're an EL, and I could quickly analyze what responses these subgroups are making. So that's all you would need to do is include the range for where the answers are and the response that you're looking for. You can also include numbers as responses, and you could also include numbers that are higher than a certain amount. So like if I wanted to know how many students scored higher than 12 on my quiz, I could do a COUNTIF function. Yvonne, yes, this was a multiple choice answer. So the responses are very specific. There's other more complicated formulas you can do if it's like closest match, near match to the response you're looking for, which are a little bit quirky. I will be going over that on Friday. I think it might be a little bit outside of the basics though. So I find this most useful for where there's a set number of responses Or if you're looking for blank responses, you want to know how many students didn't answer the question, something like that. Okay, other questions? Keep them coming. I want to talk about averages. So these are the scores for my students. And an average function is actually even easier than a countif function because you don't have any parameters or something to filter against. It's just going to average the numbers, which means I have to use numbers. I cannot do this with text, and I can't do this with true false statements. So it has to be numbers. And we do have numbers over here. We have the scores of the students. What's the average for all my classes? Let's find out. Okay, and the format is similar. You're going to start to notice a pattern here. It's going to be the equal sign. And we're going, I'm going to look at the range again. We're going from B2, that's where the first score starts, all the way down to B13. Now, imagine doing this with 150, 200 responses. It's going to be all that much easier. Whereas with this one that has only 10 to 15, it's probably not even necessary to do this calculation, but you will want to do it if you're trying to find some quick information and you're looking at data from hundreds of students. You start with an equal, and it's crazy. We have autocomplete on in Google Forms. If you can see that, it thinks that I want the average. So I didn't do that ahead of time. I just started putting the equal sign, and Google said, hey, this is predictive AI, by the way. Hey, did you want to average B2 to B13? And in fact, I do. Note that I can push the button tab, and I'll do it right now, and it gives me the average. And the average is 7 out of 15. We definitely need to review these concepts because if the average is a 50%, well, there's a lot of stuff that students don't know. I could also do an average if and include, now this would be something more complicated. I can demonstrate that during the sandbox time if you guys would like. But also I'll be talking about stuff like that on Friday in my functions class where I could analyze the average for each class period. So average if in column E, we have the number 3. Then I would get the average for period 3. Average if in column E, we have the number 2. I would get the period for number 2. And so there's a way to write that out. And let me just see if I can get it to open for me. There's a wizard for formulas. Especially if you're just getting started. Oh, there we go. Little question mark comes up. And it'll tell you, I may need to make this a little bit bigger. Yeah, it'll tell you the format for your formula if you don't know how to fill it out. So there's more advanced stuff, and I'm going to share some resources where you can find all the different formulas there are if this is what you're kind of interested in learning how to do. But it tells you what each portion of the formula does, and it gives you an example of what it could look like. And then if you were to change it, like if I were to change it to average if, for example, it would tell me what I need to write. Again, I'm not going to do that with this particular course because it's just the basics, but I can learn about it. And I can also click this link that says learn more, and it'll take me to the Google Sheets, documentation where I can learn even more about a particular function, how it works. And there's a lot of forums on there, whereas people are having trouble figuring out how to get their function to work properly. There's a lot of helpful advice. I've spent a lot of time on there myself. So there we go. We've got an average if. So I can even put a little title over here, class average. And now I know what the average is for actually, this is I should probably say quiz average because this is the average for the entire set of classes. So cool. That is the basics of the average function and the countif function. There's a lot of other functions that might be helpful too. A lot of basic math functions are really easy to start with. So let's see. Before moving on, I wanted to point out, I did say this just a minute ago, but if you see at the bottom here is this need to know more about Sheets functions. If you click this link, it goes to a Google Sheets function list. And this is everything. There are so many different formulas. Only some of them I think are relevant to teaching. A lot of them are relevant to accounting. Although sometimes as teachers, we have to be accountants with our budgets and our department monies and all of that stuff. I would say only a few of them have been relevant to my teaching practice, but everything is there. So that's a valuable resource. So a sum function adds things up. So if I were to, this is makes no sense, so I would not do this. But if I were to do something like equals sum e2 to e13, that gives me a sum of all the numbers in that column. I wouldn't need to do that because this is period numbers. But if we were looking at something like if students were logging their own time working on their AR books, or if they were logging their own, what's another example of this? Data for a science experiment that needed to be added together or averaged. You could create a template for them in spreadsheets that would automatically do those calculations for them. There's other calculations that are relevant to measurement, like convert, where you can take something like degrees in Fahrenheit and convert it to Celsius. Any science teachers out there that could use that information? We'll be talking about that on Friday, and you get a chance to practice it. So those are some functions. I found them very useful in creating department budgets, as well as just breakdowns of how money is spent on things. If you do fundraising for a club, that'd be a great tool to have, just a spreadsheet that'll do all of your money calculations for you. It can even do things like calculating a percentage of your total for tax. So you have everything all figured out, so you know the exact dollar amount. It's pretty useful in that sense. Okay, we are going to take a break because I have been talking for a very long time. And so I'm going to say 10 minutes. I am going to pause the recording now. And we'll come back at 11:10 if you need to go to the bathroom, get a snack, drink some coffee, listen to some loud music. Whatever you need to do, you feel free to take that at this time. I will stay here. So if you have other questions, please do come, please do ask them. And there'll be time during the sandbox section for your questions as well. So take care of your physical needs first. I'll see you in about 10 minutes.